Now, first off, if you're wondering why I'm looking a bit red and rough in this area, I had a treatment last week, which of course I will share with you very soon, but it hasn't healed completely. However, I just came across a brand new, super exciting study I really wanted to share with you, and I didn't have the patience to wait for this to heal completely. Hopefully it's not too distracting. But probably because I have made several videos with my HRT prescribing doctor, Dr. Robert Mathis, and since I've talked about my own past struggles with my hormones on this channel as well, I get comments and even emails from women almost daily who are struggling. Many of these women are incredibly confused about what to do. They tell me they feel horrible. They can't sleep, think clearly or function, have no energy for life, are depressed, are aching, their hair is falling out, their skin and mucous membranes are uncomfortably dry, and so on. Yet they don't know where to go from here. They have heard that hormone replacement therapy causes cancer. Often from the same physician they went to see to get some help in the first place. Now, many of these physicians are offering these women all kinds of pharmaceuticals to address their symptoms, antidepressants, sleeping pills, and so on, instead of getting to the root of the problem and prescribing them HRT, probably because they are just as confused and misinformed about the risks and benefits of hormone replacement therapy. If these women are lucky enough to find a physician willing to listen and actually help, the help is often still quite generic and limited. Some of these women have told me they are at their wit's end. Some have even shared with me that they are suicidal. Reading these comments and emails deeply saddens me, but it also infuriates me. To think that in 2025, women in perimenopause and menopause are still being dismissed, gaslit, and neglected makes me incredibly angry. But again, I think it comes down to even physicians being ill-informed about the real risks and benefits of hormone replacement therapy. Now, the misinformation around HRT largely started with a 2002 study, the Women's Health Initiative, or WHI, which was misinterpreted by the media, leading to a widespread fear that hormone replacement therapy was inherently dangerous. Based on these findings, the FDA issued a black box warning, the strongest warning issued by the Food and Drug Administration for estrogen-containing menopause treatments. So this one misinterpreted study shaped 20 years of menopause. And because of it, many women suffered and are still suffering needlessly. Well, and just last week, we got some really positive news regarding HRT. A new retrospective study looked at more than 120 million patient records and the impact of estrogen therapy when started during perimenopause, or the roughly 10-year period before the final menstrual period, compared with that of estrogen therapy after menopause and no estrogen therapy. The study found that perimenopausal women who had used estrogen for at least 10 years prior to menopause had an approximately 60% decreased risk of developing breast cancer, heart disease, and stroke compared with the two other groups. So this study suggests that early intervention, meaning early use of HRT during perimenopause, can be quite beneficial for long-term health and prevention of disease. Now, please keep in mind, this is not a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, but just as a side note, we do have randomized controlled trials showing that women who took estrogen-only hormone therapy after menopause, so these women had had a hysterectomy, had a lower rate of breast cancer than those who did not take hormone therapy. But again, this brand new trial is not a randomized controlled trial. This is again a study looking at over 120 million patient records retrospectively. It is also preliminary, and there are still lots of unknowns. But it is a step in the right direction. It will hopefully encourage more physicians to do their own research and to be open to prescribing HRT. I'm also hoping it will encourage women to initiate conversation with their provider, to ask for help, and to not settle until they get the help they want, need, and desperately deserve. And that's really why I'm making this video, to encourage you. If you are one of the many women suffering, or maybe you're not currently suffering, but you are wondering about your long-term health, your brain health, heart health, bone health, talk to your provider. If your provider is too busy or unwilling to listen or help, find a different provider. If your provider tells you what you're going through is normal and you just have to wait it out or tough it out, find a different provider. Also, if your provider is not willing to test your hormone levels, which is something that drives me crazy. I just recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who has been in menopause for several years and is struggling with all kinds of symptoms. She saw her provider and specifically asked to have her estrogen tested. Her provider told her that she doesn't test estrogen levels because they constantly fluctuate. That is the dumbest answer I have ever heard. First of all, in medicine, we test all kinds of things which constantly fluctuate. Blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol, and so on. Secondly, yes, when we are younger and we are producing plenty of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, our levels fluctuate. But once we are in menopause, they pretty much flatline. So, in my opinion, if you're hearing some background noise, Bean is in my lap. In my opinion, not testing hormone levels, even if the provider is willing to put you on hormones, but not testing your levels first, in my opinion, is neglect. Because if you don't know where you started from, how are you going to know where you're going? And once you are on HRT, your provider should still, every once in a while, check your hormone levels to make sure that what he put you on or she put you on is actually working. So again, if your provider is not willing to test your hormone levels, first of all, find a different provider. Secondly, you can now purchase your own hormone tests online without a doctor script. I actually just recently did that. I went through Quest Online. There are different labs. I will link some down below in the info box, but I went through Quest because it is the closest one to me. I purchased an estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone test, and I believe it was around $150. I made an appointment online, went to the lab, had my blood taken, and within a week or so, the results were emailed to me. Now, of course, if you want to go on HRT, you still need a prescribing doctor, but you could take your lab results to a new physician and be prepared. Also, if you are already on HRT, but you are still struggling with all kinds of symptoms, it could first of all be that your levels aren't high enough. How would you know unless you're testing your levels? So you might actually have to increase your dosage. Secondly, it could be that the form of HRT you are on is just not working for you. I have talked about my journey with finding the right form of HRT in several videos. I will link those down below. But in a nutshell, my struggle with my hormones started about 19 years ago, shortly after the Women's Health Initiative. I back then went to a new physician who was horrified that I had been on the birth control pill for 20 years. She told me it was dangerous and toxic and I needed to get off it. So, of course I did because I was really scared. Now, within a couple of weeks, I started experiencing every symptom in the book. I couldn't sleep. I was depressed, achy. I had zero motivation. My hair was falling out in bunches. My skin and mucous membranes were so dry, and so on. But this being shortly after the Women's Health Initiative and me being only 37 years old, I of course got the runaround from several physicians. I was told that because I had been on the pill for so long, my body just needed some time to kick in. Well, unfortunately, that never happened. I just started feeling worse and worse. I was 37 years young, feeling like I was 100 years old. So finally, my physician tested my estrogen levels. They were around 40, which is the level of a postmenopausal woman. So my physician put me on some bioidentical sublingual estrogen pellets, which did nothing. Then she finally agreed to put me on an estrogen patch. She increased the dosage of my patch, increased it again. Nothing happened. My levels would not budge. My estrogen levels would not budge. They stayed around 40. I saw a different physician who put me on some oral hormone replacement therapy. Again, my levels didn't budge. She increased my dosage, increased it again. She finally said, "You are taking enough for a horse. I can't increase your dosage anymore. There's something wrong with you." So I saw a different physician who put me on some generic transdermal estrogen cream. Didn't tell me how much of it to use. So I basically bathed in it, being as desperate as I was. Nothing happened. My estrogen levels would not go above 40. At this point, I'd been going on like this for about a year. I hadn't slept in about a year. I was using 5 different sleeping pills, circling them around so I wouldn't get used to one. And even with these very strong sleeping pills, I would max get 2 hours of sleep a night. I was completely exhausted. And I'm not proud of it, but there were quite a few times where I thought, I just want to jump off a cliff. So finally, one of my clients who had seen me deteriorate over the months suggested I would see her physician, Dr. Robert Mathis. I saw Dr. Mathis, and at this point, I had zero hope left. I thought, what is this guy going to do that all the other physicians hadn't already done? But I was desperate, and Dr. Mathis was super passionate. He listened to me. He spent about 3 hours with me on our first appointment. He went over all of my paperwork, which at this point I had a file this big, and he said, "Boy, your hormones are really messed up. Let's fix that." He prescribed me the hormone replacement therapy I am on now, and within a month, I started feeling better. Within a couple of months, every single symptom disappeared. Now, you often ask me, why what I'm on now, what Dr. Mathis prescribed, works for me when everything else I just talked about didn't work. And Dr. Mathis always says that hormones are like a key, and hormone receptors are like a lock. The key has to fit the lock. We all have different locks, so we all need different keys. So something might be working beautifully for me, but not for you, or vice versa. Which is why, if you're already on an HRT, but you're still struggling with all kinds of symptoms, again, first of all, you might not be taking enough, or secondly, it might not be the right form of HRT. Now, hopefully, if you decide to go on hormone replacement, your journey will be much more straightforward than mine was, and you don't have to go through a lot of trial and error. But if you do, please do not give up. If you're currently struggling, find a provider willing to listen and willing to help. If you're already on HRT, but it's not working for you, ask your provider to prescribe something different. And if you are on HRT and it is somewhat working, someone is getting answer here, but you still have all kinds of symptoms, ask your provider to check your hormone levels. You might just have to increase your dosage a bit. But again, do not give up until you feel the way you want to feel and you deserve to feel. And even more importantly, do not be afraid. Do your own research. Go to your physician armed with your own research and initiate a conversation. I hope this video was helpful. Any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I always love to hear from you. And anything you would like to share about your own journey with perimenopause, menopause, HRT, share down below. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, bye. That is not a toy.